So folks, I think we are going to have another exciting webinar today by the Dr. Sohani and Dr. Scotty Craig. I think the first part will be mostly by Dr. Sohani. Just to keep you informed, I think a lot of you have been receiving my email with the links to this webinar, and if for some reason you're not getting it, Scotty has joined, and I think
I'm here.
I think you see that I made him a presenter already. Hi, Scotty, how are you?
Hello.
Right.
Good.
Okay. Great. Okay. So as I was saying, so we have, and some of you might have been receiving my emails with the link with the link to this webinar, and also I have put up this course on Canvas, the LMS for a course on Canvas. And I have sent the invitation for creating the account on Canvas to all of you and the participants who have been interested in this. And you should have received the email from Canvas to create an account and join the course. If you have not, please let me know. Sometimes Canvas mails get lost for some reason, so just let me know. And so on that website, you will see that there is a that the recording from the last week is there. Then we have the two papers that you were required to read as homework assignments. They were on there already, and then yesterday I put up the PowerPoint slides that from the last presentation, 6 of them. And I did give a small assignment for those of you who are inclined to do that. And so just keep a lookout for that, and I just want to make that the announcement, and then over to you, Som.
Okay, thanks, Krishna. Also, I just want to make a quick note. I did not get the Canvas invitation. Maybe.
No. How did? Oh, you didn't. Oh, I see. Okay, that's a good point. Maybe I forgot to send it to you. Okay, that's a good point. I may have forgotten to send. So by the way, the audience has been extremely interactive last time, so don't be shy to be just as interactive this time as well. Keep sending the text messages right from the get-go. All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna, and hi everyone. Good morning, and welcome to session 2. Welcome back to those who were here with us last time,
yes.
And welcome to anyone who's new. So today, Scotty and I are going to. Oh, how do I advance my slides? Okay. So a quick recap of what we did last time. Session 1 gave an overview of paper writing in general and covered some parts that are typical in an engineering education kind of a paper, which is just to quickly summarize the abstract and introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So if you missed last time's session, please go ahead and watch it. As Krishna said, it's available on Canvas. And if you have any questions on that one, please send us those questions. We'd be happy to answer them. The second big thing that we ended up doing last time was to answer participant questions. And as Krishna was saying, we got a great response from the participants, a lot of questions. So we ended up spending a lot of time answering these questions. So please keep them coming. We'll set aside some time today to answer some questions, and if not, we'll do this, what we do in class, which is the muddiest point, which is go back and address some of the questions that came up from last time in next week's seminar. So we'll get into more details of some of the questions today. But before that, the last thing we did was we summarized Sternberg's 12 steps, and we are going to put up the reference paper for that one in Canvas once we get access to it. So you can read the whole paper. But the 12 steps are something Scotty went over in some amount of detail, and we'll hit them again as we go through each part.
Yes, and we'll also make sure that you have the reference to the book in case you want to get it. So we'll see if we can find a link for it in case you want to purchase the entire book for it.
Good point. All right, so the plan for today is to address some additional questions, maybe just a couple of them from last time. I think we got to a bunch of them, but there's a few that we want to cover today. Show examples of typical outlets and venues for publishing engineering education papers. We'll show both a lot of practical examples today of what the websites are, where can you go to publish, where can you go to read. And Scotty will cover a lot more detail on citing papers, finding the right papers to cite, things like that. Do you want to add anything to the plan, Scotty?
Yeah, so just to clarify that third point, what I'll be talking about kind of towards the end is after we get done talking about and discussing different types of journals and outlets, I will be expanding a little bit on the impact of those outlets and probably saving a lot of the information on citation for next time.
All right. So a couple of questions from last time that went unanswered. So one of the questions was, should the results always be positive? So that's an interesting question. And if you notice in the reading assignment, one of the papers we gave you was comparing online courses with, or an online course with its in-person counterpart. And we tried to take the same pedagogical techniques from the in-person course and apply it to online and see whether that worked or how well that worked. And we found out that it doesn't work very well. So there's an example right there of where you might construe a paper written without any positive results as such. And so the short answer is no, the results don't always have to be positive, but they have to be something that's interesting, and they have to be something that make a contribution. So the fact that we didn't have positive results in our example paper is okay, because it is pointing to a problem that needs to be looked at. It's providing the groundwork for more research, and other people or us, we can build on top of that. And that's really why we write papers, is to look at some problem and provide insight into it so that others can find it useful. So from that point of view, the answer is no, the results don't always have to be positive, or yes, you can present negative results.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy to get published, just so you know. There is usually a bias from the reviewers. They're looking for something positive in the results. So just be aware of that part as well. Scott, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I'll just add one point to maybe clarify this, might make it more complicated, as I often do. Yeah, I mean, so you can have non-significant results, and that's the technical term. And if you do, as Sohama said, sometimes you get non-significant results, and those non-significant results can be so interesting. Sometimes they're very interesting for theoretical reasons. Sometimes they're actually very interesting because there's theories and there's evidence that this effect holds in other situations, and maybe you've tried it in a completely different and novel situation, and it does not work. Those are the cases when those non-significant results actually become really interesting results. Okay.
All right, thanks. So another question that came up that we wanted to pick was, here's the question. So besides being accurate and concise, is it okay for an abstract to be written in a manner that attracts a reader? So the question was a little longer. We've kind of summarized it here. And the answer is yes. Okay, so that's the short answer. And I'd like to just add to that to say, in fact, every time you write an abstract, you should be thinking about this part, because a lot of times what happens is when people are looking for related research or doing a literature survey, they're going to look at the title. So the title needs to be accurate towards what the paper is about, and then they're going to skim through the abstract. And the abstract really should be written so that it makes someone interested enough to go look at the paper. So yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I would actually, to go a step further and encourage you to think about like your first sentence of your abstract. Use that to grab your reader. You're supposed to be really explicitly stating what your question is, but you state it in a way that makes it interesting and makes it sound important. And do that at the very beginning of the abstract.
And this goes back to something we were talking about last time, which was this idea of having others proofread your work.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely have people proofread your abstract to see if it's engaging to them or not, especially people who may not be familiar with your work. If you have some of those people look at the abstract and give you feedback on it, that would be very valuable feedback. All right. So we also got a bunch of questions related to formatting, page length, what are the different outlets for publishing, how is a conference paper different from a journal paper, and so on. And we're planning to hit some of them today, and some other questions we will hit in the next few sessions as they will be more relevant over there. Okay. All right. So jumping right into this whole outlets, journals and conferences, I wanted to point out that there are journals which are normally considered more prestigious than conferences. They are typically free for you to publish in. Some journals have charges for when you go over length. So for example, they take papers that are 10 pages, that's the recommended length, and then if you write a 12-page paper and there's no way you can cut it down to 10, they might charge you extra for the 2 pages that, or they might charge you for the extra 2 pages. But generally, most journals tend to be free or not very expensive. And the reason why I have this exclamation on beware of journals with huge page charges is because there are a lot of journals out there that are what we call pay to play.
Yeah, or predatory publishers and predatory journals. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the idea is the journal it's there just to make money. It's not there to add to the scientific knowledge that is out there. And it preys on inexperienced authors or malicious authors, let's say, who want to add to their publication count without really writing anything worthwhile. So beware if it's a journal that looks like that, and if you're not planning to write some garbage paper, if you really have a good paper that you want to publish, steer clear of the journals that are going to charge you a lot. Okay? And that's a general rule. There might be exceptions. There might be some journals that are good and do charge some paid charges.
Yeah, and let me, can I just add one point to that before we go on, actually 2 points? So there's actually a growing class of journals, which are the online open access journals. They do tend to charge, and some of them are actually reputable. But a lot of journals that fall into this category do tend to be predatory journals. So you have to be very careful, and sometimes it can be very difficult to determine that. And because of that, there are lists, for example, that sometimes are very helpful of these predatory publishers, which are publishers that are known to basically take advantage of authors, charge them a lot of money in order to publish their work. And Beale, there's a Beale's list of predatory publishers. This is updated every year, in which I will attempt to put the link to this in chat now so that we have it. So keep this in mind, and we'll add this, the link actually to the slides before we upload them for you.
Right. And that's a great point you made, Scotty, about the open access, because that's also becoming popular. This whole idea that journals are behind these paywalls and not everybody can afford to actually get articles behind these paywalls resonates personally with me. And if I have the choice and if I have the funding, I'd rather pay to get my journal open access so that people can access it. So that's something to keep an eye out as well. And when we look at the IEEE website later on today, I think there is an option there where I can show you how you can choose to go open access with it.
Yes.
Or the default tends to be just no charges for the authors.
And I was just about to bring that up. Is that there's a lot, what you see in a lot of print journals now. They allow authors, if you want to make your article open access, open to anybody on the web, you can pay the extra fee and they'll do that. A lot of journals, kind of traditional print journals, are going in that direction now.
Yep. So again, so comparing journals with conferences, a third point I'd like to make is they usually allow longer manuscripts. Most conferences tend to have shorter papers. There are many journals that will have really long. I believe JEET, for example, has up to 25 pages, and that's a decent length. There are other um, journals that don't even have page limits. You can write a 100-page journal paper if you want.
Yes.
I've been guilty of writing, I don't know, I think it was a 48-page or close to a 50-page paper in the imaging area in image quality assessment. So they do allow much longer
Like 48 pages? What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong. I like that one.
I'll jump in with a couple of questions, and one of them you already answered. They're from the how to differentiate between a good and bad paid journal. You keep getting a lot of emails, I think, in India particularly. And you already answered
Yes.
that, and the website that you provided, Scotty, has been distributed to all the audience. They must have seen the link. The other question is, how much time should one wait for the publishing of a journal or review and publishing?
That's an interesting question. Yeah,
that is the eternal question. It is a difficult question. How long should you wait?
Or I guess to rephrase the question, just so we interpret it correctly, is the question more like how long can we expect since we write a paper for it to actually be in print if it's accepted?
Yeah, that might be the question. Yeah, more. Yeah.
Okay, so if we look at it from that point of view, I'd say usually it's a year to 15 months in the areas that I have mostly published in. Scotty, with applied psychology, I don't know if it's more.
Yeah, so generally what you, like from my area, and what I've seen in a lot of the education areas, you're looking at anywhere from 30 days, so basically anywhere from a month to 3 months on reviews. Usually it's closer to 3 months to get your initial reviews back. And you may go through a couple cycles of that with submissions. After it's finally accepted.
What Scotty means by that is you might not get the paper accepted the first time around. You might have reviews that say, well, your paper's good, but you need to fix these things. There's the reviewer comments and so on. So go ahead, Scotty.
After it gets accepted, between the time it gets accepted, which is usually generally referred to as being in press at that point, is just waiting. And the time that it actually gets published, that actually varies widely by journal. And even within the journal, within one journal, that can vary widely. The reason why is because sometimes journals get they're lucky enough to get a lot of papers that are really good, that they've accepted, and they get backlogs. And it takes them a while to get them all published. But it's generally within that same year that it's accepted, it should come out. I have heard horror stories of it taking 2 years or over 2 years from the period of acceptance to when it finally gets published. But that is extremely rare.
Yeah, that doesn't happen much.
Yeah, it does not happen that often.
Right. Another thing to add there is some journals are monthly publications, some are quarterly. So if it's a monthly, you're more likely to get, once it's accepted, it's more likely to come out in print sooner than if it's a quarterly or a 6-monthly journal. Right. So moving on, conferences. So that's another venue to get your work published, or avenue, I should say, to get your work published. It's proceedings in a conference. And first off, as you can see, conferences can be expensive. Not all of them are, and I think AACE is more expensive than many other conferences that I've been to because they charge low annual dues for their members. I've been part of, say, the IEEE CS Society, which has higher dues for its members per year, but their conference registrations don't tend to be in the $700 range. And again, this $700 was for a member in early registration. So I'm sure that it's going to be more than $800 if you're a non-member and you don't register early. And that can be quite expensive. So unless you're already funded or your organization is paying for attending the conference, conference papers can end up being a little expensive. So we've already mentioned that journals are more prestigious than conferences. So you might be wondering, well, they're more expensive to publish in a conference, and it's less prestigious, so why should I ever bother doing that? And the answer varies from field to field a little bit. But the common thing that you get for a conference is that a conference is interactive. You end up getting a lot of feedback on your work if your talk is well attended, and if you are engaged, if it's engaging enough so that people actually listen to what you're saying and talk to you and ask you the right questions, come talk to you after your presentation and give some really good feedback. And that leads to the third point, which is conferences tend to be very good for networking and forming new collaborations. So let's say you present on a certain area. Let's pick a common area in our work, which is, let's say, team-based learning. And you find out, or maybe it's a little more specific, it's team-based learning in computer architecture courses. Now let's say there's a few people in the audience that are really interested in. They teach computer architecture courses, and they want to do team-based learning in their course, and they think you've done a great job based on your presentation, and they want to get in touch with you and say, look, we want to do this. How about we collaborate? You help us figure out what we should be doing, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and we can write more papers about it. And that's great. You can write papers, you can write grants together. So that's the benefit you get from attending a conference and presenting your work. You get to know people, people get to know you, which is even more important than just you getting to know them. And that's the reason why you should go for a conference now and then, depending on the work. I've mentioned it in the slide, another reason to do a conference is to present work that might be ongoing or work in progress. You've got some results, some initial results, and they look promising, they look interesting, but you want to get some feedback from others to see, where should I go with this work? What direction should I take? What would be a useful path to take with this work?
I'm sure you'll get to this, but there was a question on what are some of the good international conferences that people should be looking for in engineering.
At some point you have a slide.
Yeah, we have a slide
walkthrough website on that as well.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Scotty, you want to add anything for this slide, or should I move on?
Oh no, we can move on.
All right.
Yeah, I actually had another website I wanted to give the audience, but I can't find it right now. I was looking for it earlier too, but if I find it, I'll send it to you. It's actually on. So it gives you a list. You can actually look up journals, and it gives you the average list of how long reviews take to get back for that journal, how long it takes to actually get published, and information like that on journals from lots of different areas. And if I can find that link, I'll also share it.
Excellent. All right, so some quick examples for journals in our field, or my field, I must say. So there's the Journal of Engineering Education and Advances in Engineering Education. So these are two flagship journals from ASEE, and I'm assuming most of the audience keep saying ASEE all the time. It's the American Society for Engineering Education.
Quick question on that, quick comment on that, Soham. One of the participants, actually, Gopal Joshi from BBP, I think he's on the webinar today. He had recently sent me an email saying that a lot of these papers in ASEE, people wonder if you want to read them and learn from them, you cannot really access them without paying for it. I mean, there's no an economical way of reading some of these papers in JE. And then I sent an email to Ashok Agarwal from ASWE saying, is there some discounted way to do that? And he says, sorry, not much you can do about it. What's your thoughts on that?
Very quickly, I'll give you my feedback while Soham thinks. That is actually a very good example of an unfortunate state that we're in right now, and that a lot of the academic and research articles out there are basically stuck behind paywalls. That's why a lot of people really like the open access online journals, because they do not actually have their work hidden behind paywalls. But what you can do sometimes is contact the author directly.
Ah, okay.
And in most cases, the author can give you a copy of that article. They can share it directly, or they can share a pre-version of it. So the author can sometimes, the author themselves can help you get it. And authors are normally very excited if somebody emails them and asks them about their work.
Yes. Another thing an author can do if they are bound by copyright. So, for example, if I've written an ACE paper and it's bound by copyright, I will not be able to freely distribute it. But I can send out the slides I made for the presentation when I attended the conference.
Yeah.
There's no copyright on that.
Yes. And that's what I mean. Sometimes you can get other things. There are websites out there like, oh gosh, what is it? ResearchGate, I believe. A lot of researchers are on there, and they have shared things that can be shared. If they have articles that are not copyrighted and they are free to distribute, they've uploaded them there. So sometimes you can find sites like that where there are uploaded copies of articles that you can't get directly from like the proceedings books or journals. A couple of big ones, it's ResearchGate.com and also academia.edu are two of the big sites, big social, academic social sites like that.
Yeah, so I don't have much to add to that other than the fact that I don't philosophically agree that papers should be behind a paywall at all. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Can a published paper be presented at a conference also?
So that actually depends on the conference. Generally, if you have already published some work, you will not only present that work at a conference. So usually you don't double dip in that way. But you might present part of that work as a basis for some additional work that you're going to be talking about.
Mm-hmm. And the reverse is actually more common, where you present at a conference and perhaps the conference organizers themselves have a journal associated, like with ICTIEE and JEET, for example, where you present here and the good papers get selected automatically to be published in the associated journal, or sometimes you get an invitation from a journal based on some conference presentation that you had from that particular society. And they might say, extend this work. And the rule of thumb is there should be 30% new material, I believe. Is that accurate, Scotty?
Yeah, it depends on the journal. Usually it's at least 30%. Some will require 50, some require 60, so make sure you know what the journal requires. One other little caveat to that, So what we've been talking about primarily are conferences with published proceedings. And I think all of the conferences that Soham is telling you about are published proceedings. Not all conferences have published proceedings. If your conference does not have a published proceedings, it is then still perfectly okay for you to take the data that you presented at that conference and write it up and publish it. But you should only publish it one time.
Right. All right, so moving along this list, we have some other journals, and I've marked these two, the IEEE transactions on education and the ACM transactions on computing education, as two that I'm familiar with because they're in my discipline of, say, electrical engineering, computer science, and I tend to go to these whenever the work seems more relevant. It's more technical, perhaps, than what would go to a journal of engineering education, which is focused more on education. Engineering education in general might not be so specific to a particular discipline as such. And then there are a few that are region-specific, and I apologize, the second one in that third list isn't really region-specific. It's an international journal of engineering education. But the first one, the Australian Association for Engineering Education, that's a society that has its own conference, and it has its own journal. And I believe that some of the participants today must be familiar with it, because they tend to cater to the Southeast Asian and Australian area in general. Then, of course, finally, there's the Journal of Engineering Education Transformations, which is targeted towards the Indian audience, I think. Krishna, you want to correct me on that?
Absolutely. I mean, we are actually just a baby in it, so it's really we need a lot of help from. In fact, I think you had offered yourself to help with and the editorial board and so on. So, and from the audience as well, gradually we want to make it a more robust a journal with good quality reviewing and so on, and timeliness and so on. So, I look forward to working with this community in that area. But go ahead, yeah.
All right, very good. So I'm going to go to the IEEE website in a minute, or IEEE Transactions on Education website. But I just wanted to cover very quickly some of the conferences that are out there. So obviously the AACE Annual Conference and Expo is in the United States. The Frontiers in Education tends to be in the US, but I think they have one outside the US every 4 years or something like that. Then some of the conferences, you can look those up, that are in Asia, ICTIEE, and there's the IEEE International Conference on Teaching, Assessment, Learning for Engineering, or TALE. And there's a few more. And in fact, the link that at the bottom of this page is going to take us to a website that's going to show us a whole lot, whatever is there in the entire world. All the engineering education journals are listed there, all the conferences are listed there, and so on.
I'll make a quick pitch for one more, which is the World Engineering Education Forum. Meets once a year. This International Federation for Engineering Education Societies, which I'm closely associated with, we meet once a year, and they do have paper submissions and so on. And so it's maybe another opportunity, like there's one coming up in Korea in November. That's the World Engineering Education Forum.
Excellent. I'll add that to the slides before we publish them.
Okay. And one other thing to add in to this conversation. So you notice that most of these conferences that have been discussed today, I think almost all of them, if not all of them, are associated with societies. Most conferences are associated with societies. There are a few out there that are not. But in general, you probably want to stay with conferences that are associated with the societies. They tend to have higher impact and are much better for you to actually make personal connections with the researchers. The reason why I say stay with conferences that have societies is because just like there are predatory publishers and journals out there, there are also predatory conferences who will charge you a lot of money, and they'll have a printed or they'll have a published proceedings. It may just be something they put online, but it'll be a published proceedings. But they're not really high quality, and they don't really have a lot of respect. And it can be difficult to find those, but a couple things to look for when you're trying to make that decision. One, a big tail is it associated with a major society? Mm-hmm. Another one, look at review times. If there is a very small turnaround between when you submit and when you are going to get feedback of whether or not you're actually accepted, if that is less than 2 weeks, that is a predatory conference. So watch out for these. And they're also they're usually very expensive.
And they'll say that in the email solicitation that you get, reviews done in less than a week.
Yes.
So that's a red flag right there.
Yeah, that basically means they're not reviewing.
Yeah.
And why is that important? Well, yes, you'll get a publication for it, but other people who know anything about the area will know that those are not real conferences. And it can actually look bad on you academically and professionally if you
Right.
present there.
Yeah, it's a red flag on a CV. And
Yes.
before we get too carried away on that, I mean, don't I agree with everything Scotty has said, and you should watch out for these. But by mistake, without knowing, say you do publish in one of these venues, whether it's a journal or a predatory conference, don't be, don't think that's the end of the world.
Yes.
It's really when people see a bunch of these things on your resume or on your CV, that's when they really start to think, okay, this person is not serious about the academic work that
Exactly.
they're doing.
Yeah.
So
If
if
you if
it's
it's just
one here, it's
yeah,
okay, don't worry about it.
exactly. It should be fine. And basically people will be like, "Oh, you got caught by that one and apparently you learned."
Right. So can everyone see the screen
Yep.
that I've pulled up, the
Yes. Yep.
IEEE.org?
Yep.
Right. So this is the website for the IEEE Transactions on Education. And I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I just wanted to point out that typically for any journal website, you're going to see something, some welcome message from the editor-in-chief. And this one is actually a very useful one, so I'd say definitely bookmark this one. If you're in the electrical, computer engineering, or computer science area and want to do work in education, this is a good journal, first of all. Secondly, they've actually come up with a very interesting new model of trying to classify scholarship. And this is something we can talk about in more detail later. But I just wanted to point out that they've been very thoughtful about pointing out three kinds of scholarship here. Scholarship of application, scholarship of discovery, and scholarship of integration. Now, what that means, I'll just give you a quick example. It's in a different tab that I already have open, which is the scholarship of application. And what this is really talking about is that you don't need to be inventing something brand new every time you submit to this journal. You can be doing what's known as a validation study, or you can be applying something that has already been published by someone. Let us say, again, take the very simple example of team-based learning in an electrical engineering course. And let's say you are trying that out in your course as a validation of whether that works or not in your setting. That would typically be a good example of a scholarship of application. So the review criteria are very different for this compared to the scholarship of discovery, where you are expected to discover something brand new. So it's supposed to be a more significant contribution as far as the innovation itself is concerned. And again, I'm not going to read through the whole list here, but if you browse through their website, you'll find an article there that actually has a nice table that summarizes the three kinds of scholarship and what the review criteria are for each of that. So related to that, I also wanted to point out that every journal generally has some kind of information on how papers will be reviewed. So, and that's what I mean by the criteria for reviewing, which are listed on this website. And also, if we just click through different parts of the website, you'll also come across this page, which is taking its time to load, but it gives you a whole lot of useful information on preparing your article for publication. And that includes templates, like here's article templates, if we want to look at those. There's also a few things. There's the style manual itself for IEEE. And there's a few things that I found interesting. I saw this both in the IEEE or on the IEEE website, as well as the ACM transactions for computing education. They have something that helps you with the English in your manuscript. So if you're not a native English speaker or English writer, and if you have some really good work to present, but it's the language that's holding you back, you can obviously reach out to your colleagues and your friends to help polish your paper and make it more readable if English was really the issue or writing was an issue. But they have paid services now. A few of the journals I've seen, prestigious journals in fact, have tie-ups with people or organizations that will help you improve the writing quality.
What a fascinating idea. I love that idea. So I think that's something that Jeet should start, because a lot of our authors, and I've noticed, have some difficulties because of the English language. That's a good idea.
Right, right. Yeah, so as I said, ACMTOCE has this, IEEE Transactions on Ed has this. I don't know if JEE does. I haven't visited their site in a while.
Yeah, it's becoming much more common.
Right, it's a globalization of
Yeah.
research. Right. So it's only fair that people who are doing good work in non-English speaking countries also have a chance to publish in these journals that are globally more accepted than, say, local language journals, in fact.
So what's the difference between IEEE and an ACM paper? Can you repeat that again? Maybe you said it.
Oh, difference-wise, I think it's just different societies. I would say IEEE is the
Domains.
Institute for Electronics Engineers. It tends to be more on the electrical engineering, computer engineering side, whereas ACM is the Association for Computer Machinery, and so it's the organization for all computer science outlets. And so one of their journals, they have a lot of journals. They have a journal on AI, they have a journal on computer architecture, a bunch of journals. One of their journals is a Transactions on Computing Education called TOCE. So it's just the discipline-related engineering.
Question regarding impact factor. You might be getting to it at some point, but a couple of questions have come up on the impact factor.
Uh-huh.
Scotty's going to pick them up, yeah.
Yeah, I do have a slide which we may get to today. If not, I'll start next time with it.
Fine. So I'll just tell them to be patient. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, most journals, I'm trying to figure out whether on their homepage they have an impact factor listed. Most journals do.
Yeah, a lot of them do, but not all of them. And I'll get to why, because not all of them have impact factors.
Right.
One of the viewers is asking about that. You had a list of engineering education conferences, is it? And says, why is IUC conference not displayed on that list? I think maybe, is there an official list that you talked about? You had it on the list that you had on your slide.
Yeah, we had a list of examples on the slides.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Oh, the ICT-IEE is listed. Yeah. I don't know who's objecting to this.
That's on your slide. Was there some other website that was listing? Maybe that's what they're objecting to.
Well, the website, I've just pulled up the website that I want everyone to take a look at.
Education community resource. How do we get on that list? I guess maybe that's good.
So this is it has a hyperlink. So once I distribute the slide, I can share the hyperlink with you, or you can also see it right here.
I guess what the person is probably objecting to is not having our list, our conference listed on that site.
Exactly. And one of the people who update the site, as you can see here, is at Arizona State University, is actually in the building, I believe, between Soham and myself.
So he's in the same building as me.
He's in the same building as you? Okay.
Yeah. So Adam is a friend of mine, and he's he created this list, and now he's helped by Ken, who I don't know, but is a friend of Adam's.
Maybe you can just send him an email so he can put on him.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We can get that added.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for pointing it out, Rajesh. Yeah.
So yeah, so this thing was getting hidden a little bit with the control panel. So I want to point out this website. It might not have the visual appeal that you're looking for, but it is a very useful resource. And the main thing about it is once you get to the home page, you can look on the right-hand side in the sidebar, and you'll see that you can click on various things out here. So you can click on a list of conferences, and you'll find a big list. Obviously, we're not going to go through it in any kind of detail, but I just wanted to point out you can look through it at leisure and figure out where these conferences are held, what their typical deadlines tend to be for submission, whether they take work that you are planning to work on. So some of them might take some kind of engineering education work, some might take other kinds, some might be discipline specific. So there's a bunch of conferences listed here. I just saw EduCon here, which is also, it's a European sister conference of some of the IEEE conferences held in the US. It's a big list, and it's constantly updated by Adam and Ken. And if you know of any conferences that should be here but aren't, please let me know. I'll let Adam, or you can directly let Adam know.
Yeah, so you can let Adam know directly.
Yes.
Let me add a quick comment here on a discussion that Soam and I were having just before starting the webinar. Because most of you are wondering what's the point in knowing about all these conferences all over the world. We don't have the money to go to these conferences, etc., etc. So what Soam and I were talking about, and I'm sure Scotty will agree, is that as we build this community of researchers, global community, that all those who are in India who are doing this kind of research can start collaborating with researchers around the world. And even if sometimes you may not physically go to some of these conferences, one of your collaborators might go to it, and so you get published in a journal or a conference where you may not have the funding to go to, or sometimes you might.
Yeah.
Thanks for adding that, Krishna.
Yeah, that's a very important point. One other, just to add to that, as you see, a lot of these are international conferences. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And so international conferences do move around the world. And if there is enough interest, it is possible that somebody in India could host a conference, one of these conferences, so they could go to India.
Oh.
So
let's look out for those. That's a good point. Look out for those, and maybe somebody from the audience will take an initiative to host it. That's good.
Yes.
And hosting a conference is a huge task, by the way. So
it's massive.
I'm going to find out next spring, because I've decided to be a co-host for the ASCE Pacific Southwest conference. It's a regional conference that rotates between the four Southwest states in the U.S. But nonetheless, it's going to be quite a task.
Yeah, have fun with that.
So, besides conferences, obviously you might be interested in clicking on publication venues, which has a list of the journals in, say, STEM education research. And so so STEM is slightly broader than just engineering education, and includes science, technology, and math in addition to engineering. And so that's why this list tends to look a little longer than what you would expect for just engineering education conferences. So again, I'll just scroll through this real quick just to show you how many there are. And then there are some science-based, and there are some education-based, which tend to focus more on the education, less on the engineering aspect of it.
Yeah.
And that's really all I wanted to show you. If there are questions about this website, or if I've left some questions unanswered, I think I have a summary slide I can get to. And this one really just mainly describes the IEEE transactions on education. So quick break for questions, 5 minutes perhaps, 3 minutes, I would say. It's 10:17.
I think we've been on top of the questions. Let me just go in and see what other ones are there. Typical time for reviewing conferences. Can we publish our ideas on best practices in the classrooms, or do we have to first practice in class and then publish in papers? I don't know what that question means, but
I think I'm interpreting that as whether you need experimental data, or can you just publish an idea?
Okay, good point. Good.
And on that,
it's hard to just publish an idea by itself.
Yes, it is. Usually you have to have a lot of thought, and you have to have a lot of theory behind those types of papers.
Right.
But it is possible.
One place where it's possible or easier, I guess, to send a paper like that is if a conference has a particular work in progress or smart ideas session. I've seen a few conferences have like these lightning talks, they're called sometimes. There's different names for it, but it's usually just someone gets up, talks about something for 5 minutes, and gets quick feedback from the audience. So if the conference you're looking at has that particular avenue to express your ideas and get feedback, then yes, you might be able to do it there.
Yeah, quick comment or two, but this may be addressed later on. I think there was a comment about plagiarism check and so software available for plagiarism check, etc. And I think at some point, probably in the future webinars, I think I would urge both of you to think about a very important issue,
Right.
which the novice paper writers in engineering education, novice paper writers in India generally face is this whole section on introduction. Where you review a lot of papers,
Yeah.
and
We have it
then
covered, Krishna. Don't worry about
yeah.
it. Next session.
Okay, the
Yeah,
plagiarism.
We have the slides
that
for
will
it.
be coming up, and we'll be.
Yeah, okay, great. I just want to bring that up because somebody raised that right today, so that's fine.
Yeah. And
Another question. Yeah, another question from Rajesh. Rajesh is, are papers in engineering education useful for one's CV to get selected, promoted in the engineering department? That's a hot button there, right there, right?
That's an interesting question. I'll give a quick answer to that. In the US, the trend has changed to some extent. Every department or every college looks at these things differently, and there are some that are more progressive, I would say, who have adopted this model that, you know, scholarship is scholarship, whether it's in, say, so for example, I'm in a software engineering department, so as to say, but not all my scholarship, or in fact, none of my scholarship needs to be in software engineering. If all of it is in software engineering education, for example, but it is robust scholarship, my papers are getting cited, they're published in recognized venues, whether it's the prestigious journals or well-attended prestigious conferences, all that matters, but not every university has taken that approach, and not every college has taken that approach.
Yeah. So Rajesh, let me add to that, Rajesh. I think this what you mentioned is a serious problem in the United States, because of the large amount of research that is done in most of the universities, and how the deans and all recognize these things. And I know that personally because I was dean for 10 years. So there is a problem in that area in the United States. But my goal in India is to maybe, because we have such a large number of colleges all over India, I don't expect that most of the faculty will really not have enough funding or resources to do discipline-based research. So that's my hope is that many of the faculty in these engineering colleges, which are largely teaching institutions, really will get into research and engineering education, and that becomes a prestigious thing in your institutions. And so that's and really it's up to the administration in your colleges to start recognizing this is an important area for research, so that when the committees are looking at you, they recognize this is an important area. And above all, it's really the quality. So you have to make sure that we convey to the community that my paper that is in engineering education is just as scholarly, just as authentic, just as quality-wise high, superior quality as the papers in engineering. If you establish that credential, I think the community will accept that.
Yep. So I'm going to turn this over to Scotty.
Okay.
Scotty, are you ready to be the presenter?
Yeah. I am, possibly.
I will make the switch. Hang on a minute, yeah.
Okay. Oh, I had the option. I guess I just.
No, do you have the option? I'm not. Maybe not. I don't know. It's okay. Wait a minute. No.
Well, it's showing Scotty as presenter on my screen.
Already? Okay. Go ahead then. Yeah. Yeah, maybe it is. Okay. You did it. Okay, you did it. Okay, I didn't realize you could do it. Yeah.
Can you see
go ahead.
You can see this now?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Slideshow.
I'm sorry, Scotty. You just have 8 minutes.
That's fine. I spoke the entire time last time, so it's perfectly okay. So one thing I want to do while I'm bringing this up, I mentioned the website earlier that I wanted to give to you, journalreviewer.org, and I do already have this up here. So this is the actual website, which you should see on your screen, hopefully.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Because it went away. I have no idea what you're seeing now.
At least I am seeing it. I don't know about the panelists.
Well, if you're seeing it, everybody else should be seeing it.
Yeah.
So this is journalreviewer.com. I've actually pulled up one. They don't have every journal listed here, but for example, Computers and Human Behavior. This is one journal from my area. You can see a turnaround time on average. It's about 141 days. That's turnaround time from the minute from when you send in a paper for review to when you get it back and final decisions. and it also tells you things like average length of the reviews. This site also gets quality ratings. So the authors actually go in and rate the quality of the reviews they got. And things like, would they submit again? Would they recommend the journal? So you may be able to go in, and this is one way to get some information on journals if you're wondering about, well, how long is it going to take? So there's that, and I did list that link for you to look at. So if I can hopefully from the current slide. Okay, so let's, sorry, this is actually showing on the wrong monitor.
It's trying to come in, but it didn't, yeah.
Yeah, hold on one second. Let me see if I can. Okay,
Yep.
So we got the question earlier about the impact and the impact of journals. So you've written your paper, you're ready to send it out. How do you know if it's actually a good outlet? How do you find good outlets? There are lots of different ways, and people argue about these all the time. There's no definitive answer to what makes a good journal. But one objective factor that people tend to use are impact factors for journals. What these are, this is basically looking at, this is a number that attempts to indicate the average impact that an article has, article put in a journal has. And people get these numbers in many different ways. There are lots of different types of impact factors. There are two today that I want to talk to you about. One is the big impact factor. So usually when you hear people talk about the impact factor for journals, when people list the impact factor for journals, it's the JC, actually it should be JCR. So let me save that and drop out of this thing and go back to the current slide. Oh, look, on the fly changing. So the journal citation report, this is actually published by Thomson Reuters. So this is one of the big first impact factors. It is probably one of the more well-known ones, and then one of the ones that are thrown around, and one of the ones that are actually the more prestigious ones to have. So there's one problem with the journal citation report and these impact factor numbers from them, in that it is controlled by Thomson Reuters. If they have not approved the journals, they will not get in. And it's a very difficult process that can take years to get through. So a lot of journals do not have, the journals that actually would be really good journals do not have impact factor numbers. Sometimes I've talked to colleagues who like some of the top journals in their field or in their area do not have impact factors. And the reason why is because there are a lot of hoops you have to jump through, and if you mess up on one, you have to wait multiple years before you can apply again. So is it perfect? No. The other thing you have to realize with these impact factors from Rutgers, I'm sorry, not Rutgers, I keep saying Rutgers, Reuters, in that you will see these numbers. They go from anywhere from 0 up. The problem is that what is a good impact factor varies greatly by the actual area. So if you're in, so for example, medicine, for example, they have much higher impact factors than engineering education. So with engineering education, if you see something in the 1 or 2 range for an impact factor, that's good. So how do they get these numbers for citation? They actually look at the number of sites for an article in the last 2 years. So they look at the journal, how many citations have the articles received in the last 2 years of that journal, full 2 years. And they divide that by the number of articles published in the last 2 years. That's how they get the impact factor. So if you publish 20 articles in the past 2 years, or 40 articles in the past 2 years, in total those have gotten 40 citations, you will have an impact factor of 1. But at the same time, if you have 40 citations and you only publish 20, you can have an impact factor of 2. So it really depends on the number of articles published versus how many citations they have as far as what the impact factor will be. Another big impact factor actually put forth by Google, because you know Google does everything. It's Google Scholar uses the H5 index. And the H5 index is simply the number of articles that have the same number of citations in the last 5 years. So Google Scholar looks at the last 5 years of publications. It looks at what is the highest number of articles who have that many citations. So for example, it will, if in the last 5 years, if at least 23 articles have 23 citations, the H5 index for that journal will be 23. So what time is it? Oh, it's actually 10:30 exactly.
I think it's time, Scotty.
10:30 exactly our time. So
time to wind up, Scotty. And I just want to quickly a couple of comments, and I'll give it each one of you to add your comments to wind up as well. I just got a response from Gopal Krishna Joshi, and also I would like to recognize that we have Dr. Sushma Kulkarni here from Rajaram Bapu Institute of Technology. She is the one hosting the Journal of Engineering Education Transformations. I'm glad to see that she's here and observing what we're doing, and she's the director of the Rajaram Bapu Institute of Technology. Then we also have Gopal Krishna Joshi, who is the director of Center for Engineering Education Research at PBB College of Engineering, who's responding and commenting quite actively. And he just points out that in his institution, which has pioneered a lot of engineering education research activities, they don't distinguish between the publication of journals by the faculty, in engineering versus engineering education. So I think they've got the culture of their administrators and promotion and tenure to kind of make this change, and that's really good trailblazing activity. So thank you, Gopal, for finding that out. And over to you, Som and Scotty, to finish up.
Okay, so I do have some examples for websites, but I will actually hold off and go into some of this information next time, because it'll actually be a nice transition and build up into kind of looking at what is a and what should go into a introduction section. So we'll tack this on to the end, so we don't go over today.
Great.
All right. So quick closing remarks. We will have the slides up by tomorrow, and they will have the hyperlinks, so you can go visit the websites we talked about today. And as part of the homework, you can go through these websites and create a list of questions you might have specifically about the things that were presented today, and write those to us. And as Scotty was saying, next time he's going to pick up where he left off today, and we will talk about the introduction section for the papers. So take a look at the intros for the 2 papers that we've shared with you. I know I've said this before, and hopefully everyone's done it already, but if not, this is your last chance to go read them before we actually talk about them next time.
Okay. Great.
So thank you very much for attending.
And there are some questions which we haven't addressed. We'll compile them together and send it to you, and also put it on the website, so on the course website. So thank you all. Jai Ho. Okay.
Bye.